Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for joining us in today's episode of PhotoBiz Live. As I mentioned before, my name is Danny from the PhotoBiz team. Today we're going to be joined by Jeff from our Passionate Support team. And Jeff is one of the support team members, so he answers any incoming calls, helps you guys out with any questions with your website or your store site or your blog or any product that you've got with us. And, I'm really excited for today's webinar because Jeff is really just a awesome example of what we're talking about in today's webinar. I always get great email responses on Facebook about Jeff and through emails about, just what a pleasure he is to work with. And that's kind of what we're going to be going over in today's webinar. That's just how providing passionate support, which is kind of a phrase that PhotoBiz has coined, how having great customer service is going to enhance your business. So in addition to learning today from Jeff, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions, you can just submit them at the end of the webinar using the chat tool. And I would tell you guys normally to use the discussion, the PhotoBiz Live hashtag on Twitter, but it looks like Twitter is actually down right now when I last checked. So that's kind of surprising, but the Twitter API, when I last looked, it was not working. So we'll just hold your questions to the end of the webinar. And if at any point during the webinar today you have any difficulty hearing Jeff or myself or viewing the slides, please just use the comment box to let us know, and I'll try and help you out personally one-on-one. So we're also going to be recording this webinar, and it's going to be available online for replay on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/PhotoBiz. And the best thing I can tell you guys, go ahead and head over there and hit the subscribe button. It'll take just a second, and then you'll get a nice notification in your inbox or on your YouTube account if you have one whenever we upload a new video to our channel. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Jeff.
Thank you, Danny, and good day to everybody. I appreciate the opportunity and for you affording a bit of time to us to help you get acclimated or at least aware of what we provide in the way of PhotoBiz passionate support. As Danny explained, it's a term that we've phrased as part of our culture, so it kind of far surpasses just the virtue of the actual support experience. It really embodies more of what we do from a technical as well as support perspective. So I just wanted to share some of the fundamentals of what we do within that passionate support genre. So basically one of the things that we do is we're continuously striving for excellence. So that can include everything pertaining to keeping ourselves well abreast of all the new technologies that are being made available to clients like yourself, for your brand, to help you capitalize on efficiency, because we all know that your time is money. So anything that we can do to help facilitate better use of our products as well as social media platforms, for example, is part of what we do in the way of striving for excellence. That's also to ensure that your best online experience is conveyed to your customers. So we strive for excellence to make sure that you end up being the end beneficiary of great or excellent support. So we also provide support for creative professionals like yourselves. As many of you know, we don't cater strictly to photographers. We also have, various other types of clients and their businesses. So part of what we do, of course, is to support creative professionals like yourselves. So anything from a cake manufacturing company that I was working with today to a high-end automotive company that I work with in the UK. So part of what we do is we try and examine the business model that you have available and then figure out how to help those creative professionals strive for excellence but also infuse that passionate support. We also use the diverse experiences that we have to meet the diversities of you as our clients. So as many of you may know or maybe not know, we have bioinformation to a very minimal degree, of course, about basically what the support team consists of. And we represent a team that has lived in over 30 cities. So with those particular life experiences, that of course lends to the overall experience that we have here as a team. And so we all glean from those independent experiences, both personally as well as work-related. So we, of course, want to infuse that within that passionate support as well. We pride ourselves on being subject matter experts because ideally when you're coming to PhotoBiz, you're looking not only for a business partner, but you're also looking for a technical partner. So part of what we strive to be is that subject matter expert. But I would also say that you as the business owner and utilizing the PhotoBiz products within your brand also makes you the subject matter expert because of course we're not getting the phone calls, particularly if you're using client proofing or the store site. So we try and facilitate or mentor you in becoming subject matter experts with your particular PhotoBiz products. And then as many of you know, building a relationship with our clients to help them achieve their goals is really important to us. I think of ourselves more as strategists than we do basically technical support or support agents. We use the term quite a bit, but I think it's more far-reaching or more broad. Particularly when I think about my experiences with clients, I think that technical support probably doesn't necessarily get the fair shake that it does when we provide technical support as far as what we do here at PhotoBiz versus what may be done outside of the PhotoBiz walls. And so we want to be viewed more as strategic partners, providing you both regular support as well as technical support. But that also includes information that we can glean from the industry to help you better utilize your products and also to give you just some basic information to think about as far as your business model is concerned. And then with that, of course, I think that implies that we are willing to go the extra mile. So again, technical support or regular support is one of those far-reaching terms, but I think that the way PhotoBiz does it definitely infuses that element of passionate support. So we're very proud of that, and I'm proud to be part of a team that actually works or strives to provide their clients that type of support, because I think that in the industry or in the workforce, I don't think that we have any competition, and I say that with no false modesty. So one of the fundamentals, of course, to having a successful business, including PhotoBiz's and that passionate support, is to make sure that we all understand the importance of communication. It can be, of course, as you may all know, the make or break to the equation for success. So some of the fundamentals that we obtain during the training before we actually get on the phones or start interacting with clients is to understand some of the core fundamentals in order to be effective with you, with those products, with your business plan, and then ultimately helping you achieve that web presence that you want for your brand. One of which, of course, is projecting confidence. So that kind of implies that you have a firm grasp or understanding of what it is that you offer as a business, the services within those businesses, of course, the price indexing or the range, but also being confident about what it is that you know that you can provide to the client, particularly when you're talking about that passionate support experience, because of course you're trying to set yourself apart from your peers or your competition. So I think in projecting confidence about what your brand includes or involves is critical to that. And so part of what we do here is to make sure that you know that you have a strategic partner that's confident in the knowledge and the products that you're using. The other, of course, is sort of a known, but we can go ahead and mention it here, which is to be accessible. Part of what we pride ourselves on is not creating a single-tiered level of communication. Many outside entities only provide you the capability to access them or interact with them via support ticket. We have several different vehicles to help facilitate that. So we have the support ticket, we have the community, we have our social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook. So I highly recommend utilizing those particular platforms for your business. They're very, very effective because you never know what platform your clients may be doing or using on a day-to-day basis. So ideally what you're trying to do is place yourself within the world that they're already existing within, not having to create some new vehicle or method in order to interact with you. Managing expectations, I think, is just a given with any successful business. I have been personally, even in my own businesses, been involved in situations where sometimes time didn't necessarily afford me the best means of managing an expectation, or the assumption that the expectation that was discussed is kind of mutual on both sides, from the business owner as well as from the client's or customer's perspective. But managing the expectations as far as timelines, delivery items, any type of contractual agreements, all of that is really critical, I think, within the whole initial aspect of communication. And again, I'm probably preaching to the choir, but we just want to reiterate that here as one of the points that we utilize for our initial training. Another, of course, is practicing patience. Sometimes that can be a bit challenging given the circumstances, whether it's a busy day or a day that hasn't necessarily gone according to plan. But one of the things that we actively do, because of the environment that we're in, we're able to kind of get up and stretch, and we're able to take advantage of some of the free space that we have around us. But what we always strive to do is just maintain a modicum of professionalism. So part of what we want to do is we want to exhibit that level of patience, even for really challenging clients with very complex issues. A lot of times what we're having to do, and I'm often referred to as the PhotoBiz lifeline coach. So it's talking people back from the ledge in order to get them more focused on the actual issue at hand. So practicing patience is something that I've definitely learned more so here at PhotoBiz than I have in the actual corporate world. And like I said, I know that you all probably have to do that on a day-to-day basis given your businesses. Staying positive, I think, is another term that can be taken for granted, but I think that it's very effective when you talk about, again, the success of a business. I think most customers only really want to have a great, amicable, and cheerful experience with whatever it is that they're engaged in, whether that's purchasing a product or taking advantage of a service or obtaining information. So anything that you can do in the way of creating a positive customer experience is going to be a long-lasting one. And I think for many clients, I think that the impression of that may be kind of lessened or maybe not necessarily heightened as much as it can be. But I've learned from being here at PhotoBiz that staying positive is a great way to keep the focus and the emphasis on the online experience or the development of their particular product or business model or what have you. So I can't stress that enough. Using layman's terms is another item that I think can be missed, not from the standpoint of negligence, of course, but really more from the standpoint of being so inundated within your particular profession or business that sometimes we need to kind of take a step back, particularly if you're talking about an initial client experience. So this client hasn't been able to take advantage of your particular product or service, and that you talk more in real world terms. So particularly if you're doing photography, they probably don't know all the jargon or all the slang that may be associated with a particular function if you're talking about editing or proofing or something to that effect. So even for those businesses that are outside of the photography industry, this term still applies. We also have to practice that within our own efforts on a day-to-day basis. Of course, with us being technical in nature mostly, it's difficult sometimes, or at least it's a challenge, I should say, that talking in layman's terms can sometimes be a bit of a daunting task because you're also trying to find a way of managing that expectation, projecting that confidence, but also ensuring that you're speaking in terms that isn't above the head of the actual client or customer that you're working with. So keeping that in mind, I think that that also sets the expectations of what your client is expecting to receive from you by way of that service or product that you provide. Actively listening is a key component to what we do in addition to all the other items that I've mentioned previously. And part of what that means is basically just actively listening. In other words, you're taking notes of what's actually being conveyed to you, even in the heat of the moment. And what I mean by that is of the more, I would say, difficult or challenging client or customer experiences where maybe the initial experience that they had was less than stellar. And so you're trying to, of course, remanage the expectation, also to stay positive within that particular situation and practice that patience that we talked about before, but to actively listen to what it is that this client is sharing with you in the way of grievances or issues, so that you have a better understanding of what it is that this client is actually looking for, maybe where you missed the point of concern that they had in managing that expectation. And I think it sort of sets the precedence for anything that happens from that point forward. So actively listening and taking the notes I think is critical to the success of any of the aforementioned items, and certainly with any business. And then I think this last point is one that I think that a lot of people are uncomfortable with, and myself included. I think in being the subject matter expert of your particular business, I think it's difficult to admit, certainly to a client or customer, when you don't know something. I think the perception behind that can be twofold, one of which is, well, I don't necessarily understand my business as well as I should, or, oh gosh, I should have had that particular piece of information, and now I'm being stumped by an actual client and or customer with it. One of the ways that I think I've combated or overcome this is that I've looked at it more as a learning opportunity for me. I think in my own businesses in the past, one of the things that I've always gleaned from my business experiences is not only do I know my product or my service, but I also want to know what my clients know, because I want to know how best to serve them. So I use opportunities of not knowing something as a learning experience, not only for that particular client, but as for my business as a whole. So again, for what I've experienced in the past, I have taken it more negatively, or kind of taken it to heart that I didn't necessarily know something, but I've slowly been able to embrace that. The other benefit that you have from that, of course, is that you're actively managing that expectation. So you're not necessarily providing them with an information that would be less than true, but you're also admitting that, here's some information that I'm not necessarily that aware of or that informative on. However, I'll get back to you on that. And like I said, you can use that as a learning opportunity for yourself and also to heighten the benefit of that client or customer relationship. As you know, tone is everything, particularly when you're talking to your client and or customers over the phone. I think the same can be said for written correspondence as well. I think a lot can be taken or gleaned from the manner in which a message or information is being conveyed. As you know, some people can assume that when you're talking over a particular client or customer's head, that you're attempting to be condescending in some ways, or almost too definitive in the sense that your business doesn't necessarily accommodate any real flexibility. So I think that one of the things that I've always tried to keep in mind with, again, my past business experiences as well as those that I have here with PhotoBiz, and that is how you say something is just as important as what you're saying. So I think part of what I do, and it's almost painful at times, is I actively think about what it is that I'm going to say before I actually say it. And sometimes, that can be, a field goal, and other times it's a bunt, and then sometimes it's just basically a kick out of bounds. But what I try and do is just be mindful of what it is that I'm trying to convey, particularly when you're talking about, your particular business, whether it's photography or clothing or music or what have you, is to basically ensure that the context in which you're explaining or advising your client of something is kind of in an amicable, certainly professional tone. I think that some terms can also be misinterpreted, particularly if you're talking about a service or a function or an option that a client or customer wants to take advantage of. One of the things that I've learned over the years is that can't be done is definitely a deal killer. I think it is a way of effectively managing an expectation. However, I think that it also shows the lack of flexibility within the business. And I think that you can use the term that can't be done, but I think you also need to substantiate it with something that basically edifies or explains why this can't be done, and to also provide them an alternate. So maybe this can't be done under the context of what it is that they're asking you for specifically, but maybe you can accomplish it using this. If that's not the case, then that may be something that you may want to look at as part of furthering your business model or enhancing or maturing it. So maybe if you find, and this is probably true with all of you, is, the customer need kind of sets the tone for the business model, and so over time that will gestate and mature, and so old practices will become new. Some of that I find can be inflexible until you actually are able to get the appropriate resources or information in order to make that effective for your clients or customers. But it's one that I highly recommend. I basically refrain from saying it now, or when I do have to say it, again, I kind of back it up with an option that the client can take advantage of, and then taking that to my mentors to say, okay, I understand that this can't be done. Is there something that we can do to accommodate this if we were to get this question or request in the future? That's nice is another one that I think is sort of nondescript. I think it's also kind of a dismissive statement. So I think that part of what I think comes through with that's nice is you're not really committed to the exchange. So it kind of is sort of a, all right, well, thanks for your thoughts. That's nice. But I think that it can be substantiated again with more information about why you think that that's nice. So again, I'm sure that this is probably all basic information, but again, this is something that we constantly reiterate, particularly with the new agents that are coming into the support queue. And then lastly, I'll say tension and judgment can be sensed. I think a lot of times, and myself included, in the heat of the moment, I think that I've sort of forgotten the context of what it is that I'm actually doing, and not so much from the standpoint that I'm insubordinate or unprofessional, but I think that in very complex or heated situations, practicing that patience can be a bit of a challenge. But I think that part of what you're conveying too within your tone or how you say something is just as important as what you're saying, can also imply judgment. So if you are a high-end photographer, for example, and you have someone who comes to you with a pretty acute budget, I think part of that judgment can be sensed by way of explaining to them, well, I just don't do that kind of work. I think commonly what I've suggested to other clients, particularly when they've expressed to us that they've gotten those types of inquiries, is to maybe establish some peer relationships. So perhaps you have a competitor, a friendly peer, good competition, either locally or regionally, that you could possibly refer those clients to. And I think what that also does too is it reestablishes you as a resource that they could use, not necessarily directly but more indirectly, and that you actually provide by way of your business another service, which is referral, whether that's implied or not. So again, know your tone and just be mindful of how that can be conveyed or interpreted by your client. The questions that we have to engage in on a day-to-day basis span from the complex or the simple to the ridiculous. And it's really more based upon what it is that you're trying to achieve. I'm sure I'm not telling you all anything new. More questions is probably better, particularly when you're talking about managing that expectation, ensuring that your client and or customer understands what it is that they're going to receive in the way of that product or service or that deliverable. So what I found to be true, and I probably found this to be more so true here at PhotoBiz than in the past, mainly because of my technical work experiences in the past, you did kind of want to not so much keep it simple. So it was really more dazzling the client with a whole bunch of complexity or complex terms, which in some ways, when I think back on that now, was definitely talking above their heads. I think was not conveying the most professional tone, but it was certainly part of the culture at the time. Here at PhotoBiz, we believe in keeping it simple. So when you're talking about trying to connect a blog to a website that isn't necessarily PhotoBiz, or if they have some sort of external hosting aspect that they want to attribute to their brand that's mainly represented within PhotoBiz, part of what we want to ensure is that the client understands, of course, what we're asking them. And if they're not technical, then to make sure that we keep it in layman's terms, to exercise that patience in trying to get them at least educated to a very acute or minor point. And that's really to understand, again, the expectation of what it is that we plan to do and, of course, what the outcome for them will be. So we usually approach it from the standpoint of one question at a time. I think that that better facilitates a mutual understanding of what it is the issue consists of, or what it is that's being requested of us, and of course what it is the client and or customer can expect to receive. Open-ended questions, I think, are the best type because it leads or forces your client and or customer to basically provide you more information that's more closely aligned to whatever it is that they want. And sometimes that can be sort of a long conversation or an elongated conversation depending upon how much they want to share with you. And then, of course, maybe managing or wrangling back the focus of saying, well, this is all that I offer within the particular business, but let's collectively or collaboratively work on something that best suits your particular needs. So open-ended questions. So how did you foresee that? What was your thinking? What's your time frame? Things of that sort. And I think, again, that kind of sets the framework of that deliverable, whether it's a product or service. One-word answers I find never work unless it's a real definitive, but I try and stay away from it. So no is not no until I explain why no is not no. And yes is not yes unless I explain why yes is yes. And I think that, again, what you're trying to do is you're trying to build value or certainly validity behind the actual one-word answer. So does a one-word answer work? Yes, but I try and avoid it with placing a period behind it. A one-word answer to me is always followed up with why that is the case, whether it's yes or no or maybe, even in the case where you're not necessarily sure, you don't have the information. So even if it is a service or a product or something within your business model that you can't provide, you can say no, but I think, again, it's helpful to manage that expectation by explaining why. And part of that, I think, is the last point, which is ensuring that you're conveying to your client or customer about your particular brand or business that it's a can-do business or that you're a can-do business owner or person, and that no and can't really doesn't fall within the spectrum of what you do as a business. It's certainly not used commonly within your vocabulary, and it's not something that you want to associate with the overall customer experience. I proactively work on that from a day-to-day basis, and because of all the wonderful things that PhotoBiz enables us to do as web consultants and technical supports to client like yourself, is the fact that we usually don't have to say no or that we can't actually help you achieve something. We have the empowerment and the freedom to freely explore, the diversity of what's available, certainly from the internet perspective, but also from our own personal experiences with business model fundamentals, information that we may glean from another client that has a similar business as to yours, and so we're trying to accomplish or overcome something that you or I may be struggling with, and all of a sudden that we have that epiphany. So no and can't, again, is not something that I include within my day-to-day vocabulary. I'm proud to say that because, again, I think PhotoBiz creates or provides us the tools necessary that prevent us from even having to consider utilizing those particular terms. Listening. One of the great components of this job and any job that I've had in the past, which has mostly been serving people. I've worked in the nonprofit as well as here at PhotoBiz, but one of the things that I really enjoy is listening to people, and I think that part of what's missed in society is that we don't necessarily always actively listen, and so I think that listening is key for a couple of different reasons. One, I think, is we're so busy now with our businesses, with our lives, with all the information that we have to take in, that sometimes we have to cut to the chase. And so listening is somewhat of a luxury, particularly active listening or full listening, as I call it. So part of what I've seen myself do, and maybe you all have shared in the same experience as well, is assuming what it is that someone wants or expects and basically allowing them not to finish their particular statement or thought. So I know that it can be a particular challenge, particularly when you're talking about time being of the essence, or that there's basically some critical element that needs to happen within this small, window of time. But I really recommend, and one of the things that we highly promote as far as the actual agents go, is to be an active listener. To me, what that means, and I practice this with clients like yourselves, is that I actively listen about what it is that you're experiencing as far as an issue, what it is that you plan to do with your particular business by way of this PhotoBiz product or products. That's particularly true when we're doing the welcome call. So the welcome call is the initial call that we engage in, where we call and welcome you to PhotoBiz, inquire if you have any questions about that particular product that you've purchased. But more importantly for me, what I'm interested in is I want to actively listen at what it is that you see your vision being and how I can help you dream with your hands in order to make that a sustainable business model virtually or on the web. So part of what I do during that active listening is to allow you to convey your complete thought. I usually don't interrupt, but I may interject just to make sure that I understand what it is that we're amicably or collaboratively trying to accomplish, and of course the time frame associated with doing that. I generally use focus words, words that would imply sort of a collaborative effort, so that you understand by being a client of PhotoBiz, you and I are in this together. So particularly with the welcome call, we're talking about from beginning to end or from soup to nuts. So part of what we use within our vocabulary is that I see or I understand what it is that you want, or what it is that your goals are and what you're trying to achieve and the time frame, even if it's a matter of something that, again, may be a bit of a sticky wicket for us or you. And the same would be true, of course, in your businesses. And I think, again, what that does is it sort of more closely aligns you or more intimately aligns you with your client. So, again, you're establishing this long-term relationship, or what you hope will be a long-term relationship. And I think using words like I see and I understand creates more of a bond or more validity behind what it is that you're doing as a service and what they're taking advantage of as far as that product or service is concerned. Again, I already talked about the necessity for patience. So, of course, allowing your client or customer to finish their complete thought, even if they're on a tear or a rant. I think a lot of information can be gleaned from that. And so for me personally, when I'm working with clients and they're frustrated about a particular issue or problem, I try and actively listen and kind of allow them to sort of get that frustration out. What I've found is that by allowing them to do that, within reason of course, I'm able to obtain a lot of information. A lot of it is information that may be overlooked or may not necessarily be associated with something critical or even commonly associated with the issue that they're experiencing. And so part of what I'm doing by being an active listener and, again, making that list is try and apply the fundamental components of what I see making up this particular issue. One, so I can mentor the client or customer again to help them avoid that pitfall, but also to ensure to them that even though they've come to us with this great grievance or issue, that they understand that we've actually listened to what it is that they've said and that we've made some account of what it is that caused or created this issue, and more importantly, what caused them such angst about that particular issue. And then to summarize that back to the client. So to share that information to ensure, one, I'm managing that expectation, two, that you're affirmed or know that I actually heard your request or understood what it is that you needed from us as far as technical support or search engine optimization or anything of that sort. The same, of course, would be true with your business. I think, again, it all kind of rolls up under the general umbrella of managing expectations, because I think that that's a key component to the make or break of a particular business. And I think that oftentimes that assumption or that basic fundamental is often taken for granted. So if people don't necessarily raise a fuss, then the understanding is, oh, well, they must have got it, when maybe sometimes that they didn't. So I think summarizing at the end of a meeting with a particular client or a phone call, even if it's you sending correspondence to your client, I think it's best to kind of follow up with them to summarize, particularly if you're talking about a contractual agreement. People, generally speaking, don't read. So if you're talking about a lot of different terms or conditions or reps or warranties, one of the things that you want to do possibly, if you can, afford yourself or your customer the time is to summarize to them, maybe in a phone call, what was contained within that formal communication that you sent, like I said, by email or by contract. Again, I think that helps manage the expectation. It helps avoid confusion. And then lastly, knowing the customer's name. Now, one of the benefits that we have here at PhotoBiz is that we're able to refer to you as clients by your first name. There are some clients that I speak to or refer to as Mr. or Miss, and I think that's just sort of the old Southern charm partially, but part of it too I think is a modicum of respect. But I think the other thing is that just knowing or creating some sort of relationship with a client means utilizing their name, both at the beginning and the middle and the end of the particular conversation. I think it engages that interaction with you and the customer a lot more if they know that you're personally vested in who they are as a person and you're actually identifying them by name. I've even gotten to the point, and I'm not bragging by any means, but I even recognize some clients' voices now, which is a bit scary, but it's true. So I think part of what I think some clients may take away from that experience, or maybe not, is the fact that I've actually invested myself within that particular phone call or within that particular email, and I'm calling them to understand better what it is that they've emailed me and how I can facilitate getting whatever it is that they need resolved or addressed. So knowing the customer's name is paramount. Again, I'm sure that that's probably a given or a known by you, but again, it's something that we reiterate over and over and over again to the new agents just to ensure that they understand how important utilizing a customer's name is during the entire course of the conversation. One of the other things, and I think that this again is just a natural, particularly when you're a business owner or an entrepreneur, and that is to love what you do and to have fun doing it. One of the things that I will say about my experiences, both in the past and presently, is I have enjoyed my work, but I would not say necessarily that I always loved what I did. I think for the most part, I did what was necessary in order to survive. So whether it was the perception of surviving as being deemed, quote unquote, a success. So, making good money and having a big time job or label, I think was what I strived for more than loving what I did. And I think the difference between what I did in the past and what I do now with PhotoBiz is I absolutely love what I do here. And I hope I'm able to convey that by way of this presentation as well as the other webinars or presentations that I've done in the past. I know that that's the case with all of you that I have the opportunity to talk with, as well as my colleagues or peers have. People that are very passionate about their businesses or brave enough to embark upon starting a business. So photographers, artists, like I said, anything that spans the gamut of being an entrepreneur, I highly applaud, and I think that it's a great adventure for us to be able to share in that journey with you. And to hear about what it is that you love so much about this business that you want to present it to the world and provide this missing niche that people, doesn't know exists or maybe aren't being afforded the benefit or privilege to take advantage of because they're so used to something that may be somewhat commonplace. Again, something as nice as knowing their name. So one of the anomalies or one of the situations that Danny and I were talking about was going to a particular establishment and going to have something as simple as a haircut. And you're going in and you're just basically sitting down in the chair, very idle chit-chat, if any. They basically give you the haircut that you wanted, which was adequate, and it was fairly priced. So, you kind of walk away from this situation thinking, not bad experience, not necessarily over the top, certainly not passionate. But the difference would be, of course, paying a little bit more, but having that personalized experience where immediately when you walk in the door, they know exactly what it is that you want, or at least what you've had the last couple of times that you've been there. Of course, the typical greeting and basically just being happy to see them, of course, allowing them to talk about what it is that they'd like to accomplish within that visit. And so, again, I think that goes back to loving what you do, but also having a lot of fun with it, I think, is key, too. Part of what we get to do here, and I do this on a daily basis, and I don't necessarily have to practice it because I've gotten really good at it, but I'm a bit of a clown, so I'm professional in what I have to do from a day-to-day basis, but I think you also have to make light of some of those serious circumstances. Anytime you're talking about messing with someone's business from a virtual perspective, there's a lot of responsibility behind that, and I think from that becomes a lot of angst and a lot of nervousness and tension, and so part of what I feel my job is to make sure that you're comfortable, one, with PhotoBiz, but also about the relationship that we're establishing collectively to get you to where you need to be or where you want your business to be virtually. And so one of the things that I pride myself on is really having fun with clients. So I do a bit of joking, and I kind of talk a little bit about what may be possible, both from the simple as well as the ridiculous. But I think part of what I love about this job is not only loving what I do, but also having a lot of fun doing it. None of us are sort of canned copies of each other. I think that part of what we all represent as a collective is that we're all very diverse. But one of the things that I love about PhotoBiz is that we have a lot of fun working really hard for you. So we do things like Pizza Biz. We have team building aspects, which, again, if you have a larger business or if you're establishing a business that's more than just you, doing team building, I think, is a lot of building rapport and sort of building that camaraderie between your staff and their peers and their quote-unquote work siblings. But have fun doing it, to me, is contagious. So even when you're talking about what your clients or customers are taking advantage of, and I know this is probably true with photographers and probably any business that's out there, is understanding that it's not like breaking rocks, that people know and taking advantage of whatever it is that you're affording them in the way of a product or service is not only going to be something that you love to do and providing that to them, but that you also have fun doing it. And that's what I think is so awesome and incredible about PhotoBiz, is watching that whole journey of true entrepreneurs like yourselves, particularly those that are small in nature as well as those that are mid-sized, but also those that are really big, because PhotoBiz has quite a few of those as well. And that is, like I said, being able to watch and hear the wonder of what it is that you created or where you started from, where you are right now, and then where you hope to be in the future, and hopefully including your customers along that journey. So that basically concludes what I wanted to share as far as passionate support goes and how you can use some of the fundamentals that we actively use here on a day-to-day basis, both from the perspective of client interactions to also what we do within the internal training experiences. I think, again, that it's critical. Most of the information that I've shared with you, I'm sure you probably use on a day-to-day basis. If not, I mean, I would highly recommend kind of gleaming something from this particular webinar presentation. Again, I understand the essence of time, and that time necessarily doesn't always afford you the benefit of doing some of these things. But I think part of that other side or equation is to possibly look at technology as a means of freeing up more of your time so you can afford more of that personalized, passionate support to your business, particularly when you're talking about using a product like the PhotoBiz store or the blog or the website, is to afford yourself the benefit of utilizing us as your passionate support team, your web consultant, your SEO consultant, your technical advisor, your business model guru, and allowing us to help you free up your time to be more innovative and diverse and excited about your business, because you can actually take your hands off of the technical wheel and allow us to drive, and you just be along for the ride and allowing us to, again, take part in the journey that you have with your business. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share this information with you all. I hope that you were able to glean something from it that you feel may be helpful. My contact information is up above. You're free to email me. You don't necessarily have to go through my many assistants. No, I'm just kidding. But you can basically email me directly at jeffreyp@photobiz.com. Of course, you can call us at the toll-free number as well as our hours of availability. You can also send in a support ticket if you'd like to ask for me, but any and every one of our web consultants here would be more than happy to assist you and provide you that passionate support. So I greatly appreciate the opportunity, and I'm going to turn it back over to Danny, and we're going to talk about some of the questions that you all have, if any.
All right, thank you guys so much for tuning in today, and again, I have to thank Jeff for giving us an awesome presentation, filling us in a little bit about the culture that we have here and, ways you can take away from that and really help out with your business. Some are just basics that have been forgotten, and I'm glad we touched base on those. So it's always great to talk about this topic. I think every business can learn from it. So at this time, I wanted to see if anybody had any questions. I didn't see any right now. I know that this is kind of a different topic than we usually talk about, so there's may not be any questions, and if that's the case, then we'll wrap things up. So I'm just going to give another minute to see if anyone has any questions, and if not, then we'll conclude the session today. All right, guys. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap everything up. A question did come in from Anna. Anna, I know that you joined us a little late today, and yes, we'll have this video available online on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/PhotoBiz. You can tune in there. So thank you guys today for tuning in, and thank you so much to Jeff for taking the time to put together such a great presentation for everybody. So our next webinar next week will be with Jim Zuckerman, and he will be going over a whole bunch of great ways to really just expand your photography business. So we hope to see you guys there. Thanks again, guys, and have a great day.